Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm doing my top lane tier list for patch 13.24, so if you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. Remember, this patch did not have a lot of changes. They were mostly buffs across the board. We saw two nerfs, mostly towards outliers within the jungle being Ivan and Briar, but past that, lots of buffs kind of like leading up towards the new season, where they were mostly like systematic adjustments and like kit adjustments, which would kind of like benefit them in the next season. So let's get into it. To begin with, Azir got nerfed quite heavily with the build change from kind of being able to go both Nash's and like a Shadow Flame variation to really just being forced onto the Nash's variation. Now, as compensation for being over nerfed, they did buff him back up by like 8 damage on his W at when you have all points in it. Overall, this hasn't done a huge amount, but it's enough to push him back into the A tier. He is a niche top planer. You really only want to play him if you're proficient of a champion and maybe auto-filled in this direction when you are proficient at it. Though he can work into certain matchups, he can have build variations such as the Liandry into the Nasha or Ludens into the Nasha, depending on which kind of lane you're against. You can go Halo Blades. That tends to be his best performing keystone. However, I know some people still like the Conqueror and even the Lethal Tempo in certain situations. But yeah, Azir now finds his spot back into the A tier. Cassante was also over nerfed. They did buff him back up. He is now also going to land in the A tier. He had a bit more W damage given to him. He also had his W mana cost reduced. Overall, it was only really the damage, which means a lot there. And it did do a decent amount. It's given him like 2% win rate from going like a 47 to like a 49. And for a champion with a fairly steep learning curve, that is pretty good. Definitely back to being a relatively strong champion. Not quite S tier level, as he does definitely have answers. His W is very telegraphed, and he is overall nerfed from where he used to be. But yeah, does find himself back in the A tier. So Gragas is going to be moving up to the B tier. Change didn't do as much as I like, but the main thing here is be aware of Gragas next season, when he is no longer very much kind of like gatekept towards Everfrost / you can kind of go Ludens, Liandry, and then obviously Jungle Night Harvester. When he's no longer gatekept as much towards these AP options, then he should definitely have a better time playing tank, with the cooldown being very low at max rank on his passive. So do keep that in mind. Tank Gragas might be something to be aware of, but for the moment, you're still very much stuck towards your AP builds. It is a nice buff, gave him like 1% win rate, but not quite enough to really push him into the A tier. I would recommend kind of picking Liandry and Everfrost when you're playing him top lane. Everfrost if you are looking to be more util. Liandry is better in situations where you do just want to be outputting a bit more damage into some tankier matchups. Mordekaiser is going to stay in the S tier as a strong pick. He's always been a decent mid-elo, low-elo pick. He does fall off quite heavily in higher ranks. The 10% AP ratio buff on his Q is quite nice. It definitely now makes Rift the better mythic option over Jack Show. Rylai tends to be your first item core. Darksteel now has more value. You can then go things like Demonic and then pick up your Rift Maker. You can slot in things like a Zonya. I know people like going Morello in certain situations. You can go Abyssal in certain situations if you want to be a bit more durable. Spirit's Visage works quite nicely with your W and your overall healing with Conqueror. It also feeds into Rift Maker quite nicely as well. And then you can last slot something like a Gargoyles if you want to be a bit more durable. But then, of course, you can still go things like the Zonya and maybe a bit more AP if you are snowboarding and you have got the Magi stacked up. And Rabadon's is an option. But yeah, for standard core, I would recommend going Rylai, Demonic, Rift Maker into a Spirits. Can flex depending on like game state, and then Gargoyles last slot. That would be standard core for Mordekaiser. Definitely better as a champion. Finds himself higher end of the S tier. Needs a bit more to really push him like very high up, but definitely finds a slot there. Varus is going to be re-added into the A tier. So I removed Varus a while ago when he got nerfed on his AP variation. However, with the buff towards his W and his E, he has seen a lot more play as a tank kind of Varus variation, where he now goes Bork or Wit's End into a Radiant Virtue. It's not amazing. There are definitely kind of like counters to it. Things like Silas can work quite well, as the Varus ult is really nice on him. And you do have to be very high skill on the champion. If you just autopilot turn brain off playing ranged top laner, then you will just get farmed by enemy jungle. That is something to be aware of. So he is kind of low A at the moment. I know some people aren't building it correctly as well. I've seen some like weird like Heartsteel variations which don't perform very well. You're very much tied towards the Radiant Virtue, but once you have like the Bork, the Radiant, the Titanic in certain situations online, he is an absolute monster. You can 1v3 with this champion like almost comfortably, which is kind of alarming in certain situations. Yeah, learn from Kerberos. He is the person who kind of like popularized it. But yeah, definitely works as a solid A tier pick. Just be aware you can struggle in certain matchups and being ganked a lot. Standard kind of range things. Silas is going to move into the A tier. I've left Silas in the B tier as a while as kind of like this niche kind of Malphite counter pick, but he genuinely sees a decent amount of playing the top lane at this point and works into a lot of things. He is deserving of an A tier spot. He is a decent laner. You can go Q max, W max, Leandry, Luden, Everfrost, Night Harvester. All these variations do work on him. You do pick and choose depending on the game. The most standard one tends to be like an Electrocute Night Harvester Cosmic Drive setup, which does a huge amount of damage, lots of burst there. And yeah, Silas is a pretty good top laner. Definitely worth consider as an option, as a counter pick into certain things. Akali gonna move up into the B tier. Akali is a very much kind of like mid to top flex pick. You don't tend to just play Akali top if you didn't really play in a mid. However, some people do, definitely. Not quite as strong as Akali mid, just not really worthy of the seed here, which I kind of left her out for a while. The Q energy change not too long ago definitely allows her to be a bit more stronger within the laning phase. Sion is going to move down to the B tier. Honestly, he's close to the C tier at this point. There are just lots of things which really answer Sion. And once again, we've popularized inting Sion and his win rate plummets. Like, shock horror. Don't do it. It's not good. Play Sion the standard way. Honestly, just play Sion, like go Heartsteel, and then go either Sunfire or Titanic, and you'll find still a decent amount of success with this champion. But for the most part, as people tend to be griefing with him and not playing his builds correctly, he finds himself in the B tier. But yeah, do be aware if you build him correctly. Still an A tier pick. I'm going to remove a couple of champions. So Briar is not really played anymore in the top lane. She, once again, is like Hui. However, I'm not even going to add Hui because I imagine his play rate will drop relatively quickly. So I'm going to leave him out of the top lane tier list. Victor doesn't really see play as a top laner at the moment. In the past, it was more popular, but these days doesn't really see much play. It was usually like a airy Scorch poke setup. But yeah, doesn't see a huge amount of play anymore. Nico, gonna get removed. On-hit Nico doesn't really exist at the moment. With the item changes and mythic removals, we might see a resurgence, in which case I will add her back. But for the moment, gonna be removed. Sejuani, no one plays it anymore, sadly. I loved Sejuani top. I think it was really fun, but the play rate doesn't really exist. Like, everyone hopped off the champion when it kind of got pro-jailed. Has been nerfed continuously. Struggles in lane at this point. You can still have workarounds. I know Fimbulwinter, Heartsteel, Radiant, Sunfires, there are options there for like kind of builds which you can go. For the most part, it's not really that great at the moment and not popular. And then the other one which I want to talk about is Karma. I am not going to remove her yet, but be aware she is definitely struggling as a top lane option. Not a lot of people play her. The win rate isn't great. So yeah, just be aware of that. But overall, those are my thoughts on the top lane tier list. I know we're going to get a B patch for 13.24. Hopefully we see hopefully we just see balance. And then excited for preseason. That should be the preseason, the new season. Should be a lot of changes there. And yeah, look forward to that. So yeah, thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Goodbye.